Hello, everybody, and welcome back to One Another Marriage with Dr. David and Theresa Mabry, where we seek to strengthen relationships for greater impact on the world around you and greater satisfaction within yourselves, which I kind of flipped those at times, didn't I?
You did.
I did flip those, but that's what we're about. Hey, and we're so glad that you've all joined us and that each week the faithful one another couples out there. Are you a one another couple? If you're listening to this, you are a one another couple, even if this is your first time. Congratulations and welcome to the family. And to those long-termers, welcome to you.
Absolutely. Well, hi, Dr. David. How are you today?
I'm doing fabulous, Theresa Mabry.
Great.
Hey, I want to do this, though, right from the beginning, before you even say what the show is about.
Whoa.
Can I give a shout-out to shout-out to Idaho City, Idaho.
Oh,
and
awesome.
I kind of think this should be something we introduce every week because we have so many wonderful folks from all around the world, actually. And we gave a shout out to France.
We did.
About a month ago.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard from, people from France. We haven't heard from you yet, but you keep listening. We see you popping up there on location. And, but we have a couple faithful listeners from Idaho City, Idaho.
Okay, perfect.
And hey, hi folks.
We're gonna have to phrase this. It's a shout out. Thank you. It's a thank you shout out.
Unknown couple of the week.
Unknown couple of the week. How about unknown listener of the week? Because we don't know necessarily who it is. So
if you're listening, you're from.
Yeah.
If you're from Idaho and you're listening, just put in the comments. I think we know one. I think we know one listener from Idaho, but I don't know if they are from Idaho City.
I don't think so. Well, I know that it's not Idaho City, but I'm not exactly sure. I would need to look on the map to verify. Maybe it shows up as Idaho City.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
There's many other cities I would love to highlight, but you know what? We're going to pace ourselves. And folks, keep listening.
Well, that's the one this week.
And know that we notice it. We see. I check out the where folks are listening, and I see.
We see the stats.
We see the stats. And boy, more and more people are able to listen because you all are sharing. Keep sharing.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for subscribing and following. Thank you for listening faithfully. And we appreciate it.
Yeah. We are excited about this episode. And the funny thing is we're excited about this one and the next one, right?
Yes. Yeah. So in this episode today, this is actually going to be a 2-part episode. Today and the next one. I know. I feel like a lot of ours could be 2-parters when we get into the discussion of it. But definitely this one, we are actually going to be discussing personality types, and we're going to be discussing how those personality types can be a strength as a couple in your relationship. There can be some areas of challenge with personality types in relationships. And we're actually going to kind of, I'm going to hold David accountable not to get too nerdy with it, but that'll just show you the difference in our personality types when it comes to this. But yeah, it's going to be a 2-part series, and a lot of it is going to be centered around self inventory, right? Of looking at who you are, looking at who God has created you to be, and then also looking at how your personality impacts others and how you get along, and are there going to be some things that you need to know about yourself in order to help maybe just like curb at different times some of round off the edges maybe of some of your personality so that the corners do not just stab people all the time.
Round off the edges. But we've also been in coaching some of our couples recently. We have been on this discussion where in the assessment that we've talked about that we give our couples, and before we do what's called a scope, and that's the Big Five, and that talks about your personality in 5 different areas of social,
how much change you enjoy, organization, whether you're a pleasing person, and then emotionally steady. So we're kind of going to be unpacking those as well. But we just feel like it was on our topics to choose from, and we feel like of late it's just where we needed to head.
Yeah. So what we're saying is that so self-awareness, and couple awareness.
Yes.
So your partner awareness goes with that. Self-awareness, partner awareness, couple awareness. Those are three key areas. And going forward, self-awareness. And now here's the deal, folks. You may be listening, and I know many one another couples out there, you are aware of personality profiles and exactly what we're talking about, and many of you are not. And so this is a podcast built for whether you have experience in personality profile or whether it's all new and you're kind of like, speak to me, Mabrys. I have no idea what you're talking about. And so you may be familiar with the Enneagram, with the DISC profile, with Myers-Briggs, with Scope, or Big Five, like Theresa has mentioned. It's all about these inventories, or tests as sometimes used, but they're not tests. It's more of a snapshot of your personality. It really is, the effort is to show how God has created you and how God has formed you, right?
Yes.
And it's about preference. And then, but because of who you are, it's not apologizing for who you are, nor these aren't items that you would necessarily want to change.
True.
You like, sometimes you take an assessment and you're like, I find out that I overeat.
Right.
That's definitely something I want to change, or I need to eat more healthier things, because the assessment that I've done on myself is I eat way too much ice cream at night. And so that's something, you want to change. But and it's not like measuring like laziness. It's because that's something you want to change, but it measures more personality traits, which you'll understand as we go, and you folks out there, you'll see this as we go through these. So it's about preferences. So one thing we encourage couples to do is as an illustration, is like, are you right-handed or left-handed, and what it's like to write with to actually
your non-dominant
sign
hand.
your name with your non-dominant hand.
Sign, and let's be clear to the bulk of our audience, sign maybe like, okay, let me just print this out. No, we're talking a cursive signature. Try to do a cursive signature with your non-dominant hand.
That's right. You have a preference for one or the other. Like if you're right-handed, that's your preference.
Sure.
And left hand feels awkward. And personality is the same way. So that's where we're diving today. And but I am really excited to hear first the puzzle of the week.
Well, I don't know necessarily it's going to blow your socks off or anything, but
I'm hoping it does. I don't know. The podcast hinges on the value of the puzzle.
Well, we have heard from some of our listeners that, yes, they do resonate quite well with the puzzles from time to time. So no pressure, right?
Can we say thank you to everyone, though, because we have yet to have anyone come back with a solution for a puzzle. And I'm so grateful, because that's the temptation, right?
Yeah.
When we're speaking at conferences, folks, it's so funny because we'll talk about areas that we've maybe had a disagreement and some people can't help themselves. They shout out answers of how we should have solved the issue. One of my favorites is that we always use the illustration of earlier in our marriage, we had a conflict over how to load the dishwasher properly. and I learned a valuable lesson and in that conflict. And every time we use it as an illustration, talking about our real life, folks want to tell us, well, David, that's pretty obvious how you should have loaded the dishwasher, and why didn't you get that?
Right, which therein also ties in the personality of those people who sit in a group setting and still shout out answers for others.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, for really strangers. We are strangers to you, and you just went ahead and
they
shout
don't
out.
care.
Yeah, they don't care.
No filter.
No, they don't.
No filter.
But because we appreciate everyone's personalities.
Yeah, we sure do.
We give grace. Yeah.
We
All
sure
right.
do.
So puzzle. All right. So
Yep.
my puzzle this week comes from the dentist office. So I had to go to the dentist on this past week, right? Had to get my regular checkup. And so this has been a puzzle for a while, but I just really feel like this time I don't know, it was just heightened for me or whatever. But the TVs within the exam rooms now, it's hard enough for me to get used to TVs within the exam room, just because when I go in, they're like, oh, is there a particular channel you want or anything? And I'm like, nope, you can actually turn it off. Like, I've always had a little bit of a struggle with why. Why do we need to add televisions into so many different areas? I mean, right now, it's hard to find a restaurant where you don't have a television, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just really, really hard. And like, it's such a huge distraction.
Yeah.
And I know for some people, they may say, well, I prefer the television in the dental examining room because it takes my mind off of what's happening. But when you get when they start the process, they raise the chair, they lay you back. Can you really see the television anymore?
Excellent point.
No, so then you're just listening. So now I not only have the scraping of the utensil or whatever they're using to take the plaque off of your teeth, right?
Yep.
And then you've got the water and the air being blown in, and then they put the electric brush with the toothpaste on and all that stuff. But this time, I think the puzzle for me this time was not only the TV being on. I was not asked if there was a particular channel, which, like I said, typically I'm like, I'd prefer it to just be muted or just turn it off. I don't need it. But so I wasn't asked, and it was the volume really high this time.
Really?
Like really high, to the point that I really feel like my dental hygienist was the one watching she
What
had
was
it on. Well, I finally figured it out at the end because it was a medical show. I do know that. And then at the very, very end, when I was getting sat up, they panned, it went to the different scene, and I saw one of the actresses, and it was Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, okay.
And
that's still on?
We have never watched Grey's Anatomy, but because it's been on for eons,
wow.
I recognize...
Is ER still on?
No, stop. I recognize the one actress, which then clued me in that, this was been Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it was medical stuff the entire time.
Okay.
But loud. Like, really just... really? We don't have to have that. So, there you go. That's my puzzle, is just that I just feel like we just can't go into many different places now where distraction is just not right there at the fingertips.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And I really don't care to hear the person in the cubicle next to me that has their show on. I don't. So
you are right, is that when they lay you back in the chair, it's not like you can be watching it. I do find it a little distracting.
If they start putting televisions in the big light that they already shine above you anyway, I mean, talk about just like craziness.
I feel like I've been to a dentist.
In the light?
No, not in the light. But I feel like I've been to a dentist that has like one of those, a mobile screen, like on one of those arms that they actually move it above you.
Yes.
While the work's at. Where was that? We had that, right?
We did. But who's paying for that?
We are, of course.
Exactly.
It doesn't
well, stop
matter who's
using my
for
money. Stop raising your prices for different things to use my money to put gadgets and gadgets that have nothing to do with my care of my teeth.
If you...
Now you're going to unpack. Now you're setting off my personality on this. Now we're getting it going.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're getting the full
on Theresa
here. But this is so funny when you say that, because I'm like, you're like, who pays for that?
We are.
Everything in the office, we pay for all the nice things and whatnot. But if you don't want all the extra money going to that for amenities, and you want to save a buck, you need to find a veterinarian dentist, because just go in a barn somewhere and say,
True.
I know you don't work with humans, but I don't want to pay all that extra for
No, it's
ambiance,
ridiculous though.
for environment. Just go to the barn and have them work on your teeth there.
Okay. Thank you. Did you hear that, peeps? I just got called a barn animal. So
I did not call my wife.
now we're going to get comments. Comments are going to come flooding in now because of that.
Hey, I
All
can
right,
hear
there you
the
go.
shouts from the crowd already.
That's my puzzle. Good night.
Well, that's a good one, honey. Thanks for sharing that.
Yep. A little bit into the mind of Theresa as I sat there for my cleaning of 30 to 40 minutes and left there going, God, really? And there was nothing wrong with my teeth, by the way. I had a good
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let it be known right here that Theresa Mabry had a good bill of health.
Cleaning. Yep.
Well, I tell you what, talking about personalities, the very fact that you can express that shows one specific area of your personality that is loud and clear.
Really?
And that is you.
What is it?
You truly are an extrovert.
I am.
And I am an extrovert as well. So let's do this. This is the mode of operation for the rest of the podcast today. And then next podcast, we're going to add a little bit of fun to it. Not that this one will not be fun.
But you'll want to hit part 2 for sure.
Part 2 for sure. Because if you think that our stress animals were fun, wait until we introduce our good friend, Dr. Joseph Tucker, created animals to go with personalities, and they're not like the traditional. I know you all may be like the otter. What was it? Otter.
Well, the disc has like lion, golden retriever, otter, and
one of those.
I forget.
We
the other
actually
one.
have ocean animals, but we'll introduce that next week. Let's first learn. Our propensity is towards the Myers-Briggs and the scope. We are not as familiar with the Enneagram, although we did an unpacking of the Enneagram. You can find that video on YouTube. So go to our YouTube channel and you could see that we did an unpacking.
One Another Marriage on YouTube.
One Another Marriage on there. And you can explore and see what we did with the Enneagram, which we know it's not everyone's favorite, but we know especially with, it seems generational. There's like people embrace. And I think there's a younger generation that really embraces the Enneagram. The disc was really popular, but for different reasons. But
a lot of businesses would do the disc because it was quick and easy, and it was just kind of like to give you a little snapshot of maybe the person you were interviewing or you wanted to hire, how they would fit in with your team, that type of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So our whole agenda here, and we've done Myers-Briggs assessments and unpacking and training with marriages and families for years. We've traditionally used it, or one of the primary ways that we've used it is to use it with parents with with teens, with their teenage children. And it was to help them parent through the transitional years from high school to college. And based upon the personalities of family members, we would help them to embrace their strengths and compensate for their areas that they are not strong or they don't have the preferences. So, same thing for marriage is the discovery of personality. Because we lean Myers-Briggs and we use scope because of the prepare and enrich assessment, we were going to cover a little bit of Myers-Briggs. So that the podcast today is to talk about the 4 different, they're known as dichotomies, and it basically means there's 4 personality types that are different from one another, but they're in the same lane.
Dichotomy. That's a big word.
Dichotomy.
Good job.
Thank you. And so, so here's the main thing to capture. One of the main things to capture. It's about preference, not about strength of that personality trait. So in other words, we're going to talk about first introversion, extroversion. One is not better at extroversion than another. They could have more of a preference for extroversion, but they aren't necessarily more skilled in extroversion. That's not what, these are not skills. These are personality preferences. Now,
So you don't extrovert better than I do?
That's what we're saying. So skilled at extroversion. It's unbelievable. No, that is incorrect way of looking at it. Now, let's get this out front. 16personalities.com I believe is what it is. It'll be in the show notes below.
And it's the number 16.
Yeah, the number, 16personalities.com.
Right.
I'll make sure the correct one is in the show notes. And that's a free place to go take the Myers-Briggs. They don't use Myers-Briggs as a term, I think, because they stole it from Myers-Briggs and they're copying. But that would be a much shorter test than actually doing a full-on Myers-Briggs assessment. So yeah, but it'll give a pretty accurate assessment. And that's what we encourage people to do. Otherwise, there are for pay locations that you can go to. So let's go through each one of the dichotomies. And so the first one, once again, it's like right-handed versus left-handed. The first one is extroversion and introversion. These are two opposites or dichotomies. So this is the first level is how one gains energy. Where do they get their energy from? So an extrovert is not about being better up front or shy, which a lot of people think of this one as, well, they're a real talkative upfront person and they're super shy, but that's not necessarily the case. It's about where one gains their energy. So an extrovert and someone that prefers extroversion, they gain their energy from being with people. They relate to the outer world, and the outer world with people and things and activities and involvement. Introverts are more focused on the inner world, and so it's thoughts, feelings, or within oneself. They like being with fewer people at one time. It's not like they don't like being with people. They just like being with fewer at one time. It's more one-on-one. In fact, an introvert can be super talkative, but it's more with fewer one-on-one or fewer people at a time, more comfortable settings. They do gain their energy and they refuel by pulling away and being inward. They also will process ideas and thoughts inward first before bringing it out. An extrovert, on the other hand, is one that gains their energy from being with people, with things, and they gain their energy from being in this outer world. And it's not like they can't function in that inner world and being pulled away, but they prefer hanging in that outer world. And the final point with them is that an extrovert would be more likely to process their thoughts as they're thinking through things out loud than they will inward. And so extroversion, process outside, energy from outside, being with people. Introvert is one that's more inward and inward focused.
Right. So a lot of times when we talk about extroversion and introversion, we have people who will automatically be like, oh, well, I feel like I'm an extroverted introvert, right? And so once again, it's looking at your preference, because you could be on the scale of the extroversion, introversion. You could be kind of landing in the middle a little bit. You may not assess like completely off the chart, one or the other. Some people totally off the chart, like, for sure. But then there's a lot of people that they really are an introvert due to the description you just gave, but they have no problem talking with people. They just prefer to talk one-on-one or in a smaller group, right? Exactly. So just because you're having a conversation with somebody and it's like, well, they still talked and they carried the conversation and stuff. No, it doesn't mean that an introvert will just, be by themselves all the time or standing off to the side in a group setting all the time. You'll find them engaging in more personal one-on-one type of situations. So once again, it goes back to your preference over how you gain your energy. And you may have certain scenarios that you feel like you're both, or you can flip the switch to both. But
you don't always do them with equal comfort.
Exactly. So it's all about that comfort and that. And so for you and I, we are both extroverted people, but Go ahead.
So just some keywords. I wanted to hit keywords with
Yes.
each of these first. Is it extroversion? Some keywords for an extrovert would be action, outward, people, interaction, many, expressive, do, think, do. And then for introversion, it'd be reflection, inward, privacy, concentration, few, quiet, think, do, think.
Mm-hmm.
So you may be thinking about where you're at. Theresa and I when we take the assessment, we're very clearly we're clearly extroverted. We gain our energy from being with other people, from expressing our thoughts. Now, how this works with couples is interesting, because if you get two extroverts or two introverts, or if you get an extrovert and an introvert, it's maximizing your strengths.
Right. So just as an example for you and I, in a particular setting we were in just this past weekend, we got together with some friends through kind of workplace friends, people that we have known for a while,
long-time friends,
but we have not seen in person in a while. It's not like we were coming from different areas and someone was hosting at their house, right? And so in watching that group, I kind of got a little bit of a chuckle because we clearly have those who are more introverted. And even though it was a smaller group setting, they will prefer to sit and stay at the table with just that one other person or two other people at their table, right? And then there's like you and I and a couple of the other extroverts that we know that are there. And we were being hosted by this couple who had this wonderful outside patio and this long yard with like a garden bed in the back and just everything. So we had a lot of space to kind of move around, but it's interesting to watch because like you and I, we engaged with, I think, every single person present.
We worked the crowd.
We did. We worked the crowd, and we don't work the crowd always together. I'm comfortable to go on my own. You're comfortable to go on your own. And I think that shows our extroversion, because there's a lot of couples where one may be extroverted and the other one hangs with them, right? Yes. Because it's uncomfortable for that person to be left alone, or the spouse that just needs the one-on-one. When they find that comfortable person, then the extroverted spouse sometimes can peel away to go work the room a little bit more. And you and I, well, first of all, because we knew these people and we wanted to catch up with some of them. But then when we get to the car, that's where you and I then, it's like we fill the gaps of the conversations that we had. We talked the whole drive back home. We even, we have no problem continuing to share with each other. Yeah.
Which that's a couple things come from that. Number one, we have really good friends who, when they're in a group like that, like a gathering, social gathering, you would never guess that they're introverted, because they've learned how to work the room and they're kind of what they call situational extroverts or situational introverts.
Right.
And so that's the first thing is like, and I love how you pointed out, like if there's differences in spouses, that's okay. And that's one of the points in us discussing this is, if you have a spouse that's different from you, don't lay upon them an expectation of working outside of their preference too much. Now, as an extrovert, and as extroverts, the two of us, we have to learn how to think inward and not always think outward. So we need to think like introverts. We need to behave like introverts sometimes, but we can't be expected to live there permanently. That's an example of, so with your spouse, if you are different, especially giving grace to your spouse. Now, where we see this happen a lot is a compromise with young couples, particularly that we're coaching for premarital or early in their marriage, and that one wants to hang out with friends all the time, and the one who is like, I just really want to spend time at home with you, reading a book on the couch, you on one couch, me on the other, and we're just kind of, not much is said. And others like, no, let's go hang out with friends.
Or go do something.
Yeah. And
just get out,
and
right?
it feels like it kills one or the other doing what the one or the other wants to do. And my friends, that means you work together as a team on that social aspect of being able to say, you know what, sometimes let's go hang out with others. And can we have we encourage even a code word. We've had that before.
Yeah.
When the introvert, for instance, if the introvert feels like my cup is full and I really can't do this anymore, can turn to the extroverted spouse and have a certain way of communicating in a healthy way that, hey, it's time for us to go. But at the same time, the introvert being conscious of, has my extroverted spouse had enough time to get their tank filled?
Right.
And then in the same way, for the extroverted spouse to be able to say to the introverted spouse, when you're home by yourself a lot, saying some way of saying, honey, we really do need to have balance and go out and hang out with others, right?
Yep, that's a great explanation and way to kind of unpack it, because not everyone is going to be as similar in their couple relationships. And so if you find yourself that one of you has a preference for one direction, the other one has a preference for the other direction, it's continuing, once again, goes back to a healthy communication with the assertiveness to say what you want or need, and then balancing that, and extroverts, you just can't drag the introverts everywhere. And at the same time, introverts, you can't just expect the extroverts to just stay holed up all the time.
Yeah.
So balancing that out, and then as you grow and develop together, which in this particular setting that I described for you and I, there were a few people, yes, we knew them, but we really hadn't engaged a lot with them.
Yeah.
And then there was others that we've had a long history with, but like we said, we haven't seen in a while. So there was a certain comfortability that we both had. And I think that played into a little bit more of you and I branching out from each other. And, like you went into the house to go to the bathroom. You didn't return for like 20 minutes. And I'm like, who else is in the house? And then you came out and I'm like, where have you been? And you were like, oh, well, so-and-so's in there and they were making their food. And we were just, she and I were just, catching up. So I was like, okay. And I knew somebody else had to be in there, but it was just kind of funny because, I was, but at that particular time, people were just arriving. And the funny thing was the introverts were all the ones that had arrived first, and I was the only extrovert out there with them.
So it's all of a sudden everyone's just kind of staring at each other.
Everybody just standing there.
And the funny thing with some introverts is that they all could stand and stare at each other and be like, this is a really good time.
Yeah, I think I was the one that felt awkward. They were all fine, and I'm like, oh no, I need to well,
it's extroverts always needing to fill the space.
To fill the space. And I've worked really, really hard at that, of not over talking too much in those settings, but being able to at least engage and say hello. But then if silence is still filling, I'll stand silent.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be right there with you.
That's an area. I think this is going to end up being a whole podcast on introversion and extroversion. We really need to move on with it here, but there's so much to be said. Instead
of a 2-phase, this is going to be a 4-part series, ladies and gentlemen. Okay.
This is you could tell why we had to break this down into 2. The next component, the dichotomy for a Myers-Briggs understanding of personality, would be sensing and intuition. Kind of suspend your understanding of definitions of terms, traditional definitions, because Myers-Briggs, they would define these a little differently. And so this is the way we take in information, and it's the kind of information that we like and we trust. This is key. This is important. And
so say that again. It's the kind of information that we like and that we trust.
So the way we take information in and the kind of information that we like and trust. And this is like everything from like, even if you walk into a new room and you take in the information, like how do you see that room, to circumstances of, hey, there's a planned vacation as a family. How do I take in the information that this is going to occur? What kind of information do we like and trust? So a sensing person will focus on more of the present realities, the verifiable facts and experiences. So very much more tangible. Someone who prefers intuition, they look at more future possibilities, the big picture, and like insights. So, all people kind of use the same kind of, use both, but not with the same amount of ease, once again. So, because many people can, if they're intuitive and they still like present realities, verifiable facts, experiences, but in the same way, the other direction. But it's more of where preference and what you like. And so if those that are sensing, they're going to focus on the once again, more tangible, observable facts, things that are concrete. They carefully and thoroughly kind of process toward conclusions. They're specific and literal, and they trust experience. Someone that's more intuitive they're gonna see more patterns of meanings and how they're more abstract and imaginative, more future oriented. They move quickly to conclusions, and they follow more gut, like their gut follow hunches, and they trust insight more than experience. So you may find yourselves as a couple, if you're the opposite on this, then one's going to be more detailed and tangible in processing information. The other ones may feel like they have their head in the clouds a little bit with like dreaming and big picture kind of things. Like, I like to see it this way, is that those that are stronger with, and full disclosure here, I'm more intuitive and you, Theresa, are more sensing. So the way it works for us is that I'm a big picture guy and kind of future oriented, a visionary. And so I can say, we really need to do this and like this dream in the future. You're one that comes in and says, okay, if that's going to be accomplished, we need to really be thinking about these details that to accomplish that task. So that for me, that's one of the best ways to explain the difference between a sensing personality preference and an intuitive personality preference, is that ability right there and difference. Yes,
and that is who you and I are, but you still have that ability to envision down the road and look at those things, and you can think through like steps, whereas I hardly ever come to you with a vision like down the road, like that truly is not my propensity. And I am about the steps and the practical of there, but I rely on you to help give that big picture and vision, because it's just not part. I'm 51 years old and still, I obviously know that the future lies ahead, and I obviously, can plan ahead for a little bit, but I don't, my preference is definitely stick to the details.
Yeah. Well, so some of your words would be facts, realistic, specific, present, keep, practical, what is. And for me, good words, keywords would be ideas, imaginative, general, future, change, theoretical, what could be. And that's when I go down through that list, I'm like, yes.
And me too. I'm like, yes.
And you would affirm that within me, and I'd affirm within you that sensing side.
Yeah.
Now for us, for a couple, and once again, folks, you both could be sensing and you both could be intuitive. And that's recognizing self-awareness, partner awareness, and then couple awareness.
Right.
So for Theresa and myself, self-awareness for me is intuitive. Self-awareness for Theresa is sensing. And then for me, recognizing, saying, okay, since I know who I am, intuitive, I'm more the ideas and imaginative and future and theoretical and, hey, honey, what about this?
Mm-hmm.
And I recognize when I go to you, I know that you're looking at it and your preference is to look at the same exact things with, okay, what are the facts? What's realistic? What's specific? How can we be practical about this? I'm like, hey, what's the big picture? And you're like, let's be practical. And that's helpful as we work as a team. And that's couple awareness then, because we have a real strength. I think a lot of things we do with one another marriage work like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where I'll say, honey, this is the big picture. This is the vision for what we need to do with helping as many couples as possible. And you come in and say, and bring your strengths of sensing with, okay, here's some practical things that we need to do and think through as we process this.
Right. I mean, yep, that is exactly who we are. So, and we've had, we've gotten a lot better. I mean, We've known each other now a long time and been married for 28 of those years. And we've definitely gotten better, where before there was a little bit of energy that I would draw, I think, from your visionary aspect or having ideas, being able to generate, that type of stuff on the fly, or, thinking through that. But there was also that practical application or hesitation that I had to, when you were jumping too far ahead of me in the relationship. And I was not in the relationship, but in our marriage, where there was a vision or something that you were kind of looking ahead to. And we've worked really hard on me not pulling the reins too tight to hold you back. And you've worked really hard on not jumping too far ahead that you broke the rope type of deal. Right.
Yeah.
So,
and I love that illustration, honey, because are balancing one another, and that for couples that are different in preferences, balancing one another rather than fighting against one another is a key component. Communication is the key, and then learning how communication happens from your partner. Now, what happens when a couple is the same? Then finding resources to help add that area that is not the preference, or whether it's a resource outside of themselves, or if you within yourselves can say, okay, we know that we're both these big picture theoretical dreamers. And who are we going to put in our life? Or how can we slip over into an area that's not a preference every once in a while in order to have balance in our lives? Or the couple who are both sensing and are both facts, figures, the here and now, and they don't dream too much.
Yeah.
And finding activities, skills, exercises to stretch that area, or to help practice the theoretical, the dreaming, the big picture, the thinking, okay, so what do we want life to look like in 20 years? How are we preparing for retirement? What do we want to do in the future? And then having some resources to help think that through.
Absolutely.
So for folks, today, it's focusing on introversion, extroversion, and sensing and intuition. And when we come back together, the next podcast, we will discuss thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving, and we're going to introduce to you, we hope to introduce to you.
We may have to do a part 3.
We may have to do a part 3. How about that? Folks, how about that announcement on the fly?
That's on the fly. I know. I'm just sitting here because, once again, this is my sensing, right? Coming out. My brain is just like, practically, I just don't know how we can present next week the other 2 sides and dive into that last part. So, folks, it may turn into a
we're super
part 3.
planned out here on the fly, thinking, okay, because we see that 45 minutes is hit, and we really want to be sensitive with your time, because we know that you have a planned schedule. When you listen to One Another Marriage Podcast, we know that you have things going. You're planning your day. Like we've said before, you're preparing dinner or you're spending the evening or your morning commute, however you're consuming this material, you have 45 minutes set for this and you plan for that. And we want to hit that right on. So let's do this. Let's end with the verse of the day.
Yes.
And then
let's do it.
next time, let's come back next week and we're going to discuss the other two components, two dichotomies for Myers-Briggs. And then we'll see how they all come together.
Yes.
And that may go into, as Theresa said, we may push that into a third podcast, which we would just fine, just to make sure
absolutely.
folks get content.
It's our call.
That's what we do. What we want to do.
That's the beauty of it.
We can do what we want to do. Okay.
All right. Do you have the verse?
The verse.
Awesome.
The verse of the day is this: "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ, God, forgave you." Ephesians 4:32. I stumbled through that. I'm going to try that again. Here it goes. "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you." That sounded better that time.
There we go.
Ephesians 4:32.
Good job. Good job, babe. All right. Well, hey, that wraps up this part of our two-part, original two-part series on personality types and how you as a couple can work to blend and share your strengths, and also work as a couple to recognize areas of challenge that may come in with your personality.
We really want to encourage you to like, follow, subscribe, and
rate and review.
And you know what? Hit that share button right away.
Absolutely.
Think of a couple that you think would enjoy this, that would benefit, that would be strengthened by this. And folks, once again, our contention is One Another Marriage is not just David and Theresa Mabry, but it is all of us together seeking to be strengthened and to help strengthen other couples. We bear this responsibility together as a community to help as many couples as possible. Thanks a lot for joining us this week, and we will see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.